Hello and welcome to Celebrating Marvel Studios. I am your host, Chad Thomas. In this episode, we are talking about WandaVision episode number 5 with some spoilers, but there's also going to be some theories that I have and that I've heard about, so I would like to discuss those as well. So in Wanda's world, it is now the 1980s, and she and Vision are having a hard time getting the twins to stop crying and go to sleep, and it's kind of like a little bit of a hilarious little adventure. So Wanda decides that she's going to use some magic and take a shortcut and zap them to sleep. Well, after a couple attempts, it doesn't work. So Agnes stops by and she's like, oh, I can, get them to sleep and blah, blah, blah. And Vision's like, well, have you washed your hands? Everything like that. Very protective. And then Agatha seems to be lost. And she kind of turns to Wanda as far as direction. As if she was on the sitcom and somebody dropped or lost a line. So she's like, well, should I take it from the top? And then Wanda's like, no. So she goes over to Vision and she's like, no, just let Agnes do her thing, that we could use the break and whatnot. And so they, look back over, and Agnes is there spraying lavender over the children and whatnot. Then she's looking through the cabinets for some dark liquor, which used to be a thing quite a long time ago. I'm certainly sure it's frowned upon now, but it would be that if you rubbed the gums of your newborns with a little bit of dark liquor, it would basically make them sleep. So that wasn't really a thing that was going to happen, and then it was just like all of a sudden it was quiet, and Vision and Wanda look into the cribs and the babies are gone. And then all of a sudden they hear these little voices behind them, and they turn around, and the twins are now 5-year-old boys. And Agnes makes a very prominent statement saying, children, you just can't control them. The opening credits sequence is definitely patterned on the old 80s sitcom of Family Ties, with a little bit of Growing Pains thrown in there, and maybe even a little Full House. But it was kind of cool. It was kind of neat to see some of the trends that I remember growing up with being shown in the show, so that was kind of cool. So in the real world, acting director of S.W.O.R.D. Haywood is viewing Wanda as a terrorist. Like, she's holding these people hostage, forcing them to do things against their will, and Monica is kind of championing a little bit for Wanda, saying, it's just, this is the product of something that has happened. She's not doing this with malintent. It just happens to be, and she thinks they need to take a softer approach as far as, disabling what is going on. Agnes is seemingly oblivious to the magical aspects that have been going around in the Vision household. And Vision even says that, Wanda's getting a little too free with, showing her powers. And Wanda's like, why should we have to? In her head, she's probably thinking, this is our perfect life. This is what I'm controlling. And who cares who sees what? Because if they don't like it, I can make them leave. But yes, Agnes is still a little bit oblivious, but still yet aware and doesn't question. In actual reality, Jimmy Woo and Dr. Darcy Lewis and Monica Rambeau are going through methods to try to see how they can, safely disable Wanda and have everything come out to be a good end for everybody. And for some odd reason, I can't remember the drop line, but they were talking about how Wanda could have defeated Thanos herself. But, and Jimmy Woo said, well, actually, technically, Captain Marvel could be the one to do it. And the mention of Captain Marvel put a weird sort of face on Monica Rambeau. In case you're not familiar, back in the Captain Marvel movie, Carol Danvers was best friends with Maria Rambeau, who is Monica's mother. So I don't know if there was a falling out between the two of them at some point, and Monica feels a little bit disenfranchised with Captain Marvel. Kind of hard to say, but it's interesting. There's more to it. So in Westview, Vision's at work, and it's time for computers to start being relevant, and so they're setting up these computers, and the whole office is so excited, and Vision gets everything kind of like hooked up, and all of a sudden this email pops up on all the computers, and it's something from Sword, something talking about Wanda, and the whole office starts reading it simultaneously in like a really creepy manner, and it's just kind of like really like weirding Vision out. And so as his co-worker Norm is standing right there, kind of like, oh, this is so cool and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff, Vision puts his fingers to his head and kind of breaks Wanda's hold, and Norm is just terrified. And he's like, I need to get a hold of my sister. Her father is really sick. I need help. Get her out of my head. We need to make sure my father is safe. And Vision is just like basically quickly going, what the flying F is going on? And realizing that Norm is in pain, he reinserts Wanda's control. And that, puts some really, really awful vibes. So, as 5-year-olds, Tommy and Billy found a dog, and they really wanted, to keep him and whatnot, and Agatha brought over a doghouse, and Vision was just like, I'm not too really keen on this, until they're like, 10. And then suddenly the boys aged themselves up to 10. So they've got this dog to take care of, and they're sitting there playing with him one day, and they ask where Vision, their dad, was, and this is actually on the same day that that Vision discovers what he discovers, and they were like, it's Saturday, Dad shouldn't be at work, and everyone was like, well, no, it's Monday, and they're like, it was Saturday this morning. She's like, oh, there was a special project that he got called in for, and blah blah blah, and all that kind of stuff, and then suddenly the dog, Sparky, like goes to the door and is like sniffing, kind of like, kind of acting like really crazy, and so Wanda tells the boys to stay there, and she goes out to investigate, but naturally the boys come out as well. And then we cut back to the real world, and they're sending in a drone that can penetrate the barrier that Wanda has created and strengthened by this point. This drone was basically just a reconnaissance mission sort of thing to see, what's going on, what is happening, where Wanda is, and they zero in on her, and her eyes start to glow red, and Haywood is like, take the shot, and Monica Rambeau is just like, what? That's not what this was about. What are you doing? What is going on here? And so all of a sudden there was like this breach, like red alert kind of thing, and practically everybody runs outside, and through the force field comes Wanda in her full Avengers uniform, dragging the drone, and she is pissed off. So she throws the drone at them and says, "Is this yours?" And she's more in her Sokovian accent, which I really appreciate. A lot, actually. And she basically tells everybody that she just wants to be left alone. This is her home. She doesn't want anybody else to be involved or anything like that. She's not harming anybody. Haywood doesn't believe it. He has all these guns trained on her. And even Monica's just like, you let me in because you knew that I could help you. I help, deliver your babies. You know that I'm an ally. And I'm just like, you're still here. And it's just like, oh crap, what is gonna go on? And eventually Wanda's just like, leave me the F alone. She trains all the guns to go on to Hayward. Hayward's all like, no. And just as she's entering the hex, again, she empowers it with her power, drops the guns off Hayward, and that's where we're left off there. So back in Westview, the boys are still looking for Sparky. With Wanda, mailman says, oh, your mother will make sure that, he's not too far away. Hey. So it's kind of like he knows, he's being manipulated. And suddenly they get to Agnes's, and she pops up out of the bush with something wrapped up in a blanket, and she says, he ate too many leaves off this plant, and by the time that I found him, it was too late. I'm really sorry. And Wanda was just like, oh my gosh. So obviously the boys are devastated. And Tommy's like, Mom, you can do anything. Vic's dead. And Agnes was like, can you do that? And Wanda goes on to explain that, there are certain rules in life, and there's certain things you can and cannot do. And I need to let you know that that is forever. And then I think it was Billy that said, well, you said family was forever. Sparky was family. And you could tell, like, there was part of her that was going, in her own head, kind of arguing with herself. And it just had to be how it was. So it cuts to their home, and Wanda's putting away things. It's getting close to nighttime. Vision comes home, or comes inside, and basically makes the comment that, it's kind of sad that, you got a dog and bury it in the same day. And Wanda's like, yeah, life in the suburbs, it's fast. And then Vision says, I had a talk with Ron. How did I forget his name? I hope it's Ron. But anyways, I had a discussion with Ron outside of your influence. And Wanda just kind of just like takes it back a little bit. And so Vision starts questioning her, and she like decides to turn on the end credits to, distract from this conversation that's about to happen. And somehow Vision breaks that and confronts her, and he's like, what are you doing? What is going on here? And he's like, why are you lying to me? And he kind of raises himself up in the air, and Wanda does the same thing, and she's just like, I want these things for you. You are my husband. You are Tommy and Billy's father. And he was just like, I can't believe you do this to me. I don't know what happened to me before Westview. And Wanda's like, you've never talked to me this way. And so they kind of just like settle down, get back down to the ground. And Vision is just like, you need to stop this. And she's like, I don't even know how this began. And then there's a ring at the doorbell. And Wanda's like, I didn't do this. And Vision's like, well, certain patterns that come to be tend to lead that you did. The doorbell rings again. And Wanda gets up to open the door. Vision gets up and stands off in the distance. And she opens the door, and she looks perplexed. And then you see the back of the head of who is actually at the door. And that automatically tells you who it is. And she notices. And then it turns around. And it is Peter from the X-Men films as Quicksilver. And he's like, can I give my sister a long lost hug or something like that? And she's like, Peter. And so she's massively confused. And then, they, disembrace, and he looks over to Vision. He says, "Who's the popsicle?" And then, laugh from the audience, and that ends the episode. Okay. Just kind of flew over a lot of the basics and a lot of the key points to the episode. And now I'm going to talk about theories as far as my own, and a few things that I've heard, and I've heard that there are major spoilers that are out there. I haven't listened to any of them. I've heard glimpses of them, and I'm curious to see how it really pans out and what it means for mutants coming into the MCU. So now what I have to do is drop as quick as I can the history of the MCU and the Fox X-Men movies. When Marvel went bankrupt, 20th Century Fox bought the rights to X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Marvel still held onto many of their own titles. I think Iron Man and Hulk and Spider-Man stood with Paramount or Sony, however it worked out, but the characters were branched out. They couldn't be put together by any means. So, when Marvel wanted to use Wanda and Pietro in their films, they couldn't call them mutants, even though they were. And they couldn't call them by their actual code names either. So, Wanda was Wanda Maximoff, and Pietro is Pietro Maximoff. So there was no clear ties to anything related to X-Men, from which their lore begins in the comics. So on the Fox side, they only really introduced Quicksilver, and Quicksilver was his name, and he was played by Evan Peters, and his name was Peter Maximoff, and his father was Magneto, which is consistent from the comics. And that had its own, really good spin. Over in Marvel, their parentage isn't really discussed so much. And in fact, Pietro is killed by Ultron in the movie Age of Ultron. So, the idea that Pietro shows up in Westview as Peter Maximoff, who is technically her brother, but not. Now that the rights have been joined, this is where it makes it so impossible to tell where they're going, because Disney has bought Fox, and now that they are joined, there can be mutants in the MCU, there can be Avengers in the Fox universe, or however they're gonna amalgamate that. And that's what leads to so many questions about this situation. And it's so confusing and it's so perplexing, and it just makes me want to watch the show more. Um, there are theories that Pietro, portrayed by Evan Peters, is not actually Pietro at all. I highly doubt they would resurrect Aaron Taylor Johnson's Pietro to come back, but you never know. There's going to be a lot of multiverse stories coming up that intertwine different realities, and it's going to get interesting, and I think this is where it starts. So with the introduction of Evan Peters, Peter Maximoff, you now have the chance to grab onto any of Fox's X-Men as either proper MCU or a multi-dimensional MCU. Excuse me. Be that as it may, it could turn out that Evan Peters is not Peter and or Pietro at all. He could be the grand manipulator of Westview, not Wanda. He could be controlling her and using her powers, and she definitely has a part in it, but it could be that his character does have control over Wanda. And it's interesting. There's so many theories. I'm just wondering which path they're going to take. Also with Tommy and Billy, being that Wanda can't control her children via magic. And that she is slowly losing control of Vision, which, according to Sword, she broke into Sword and stole his body, which was in pieces. So did she put him back together, even though he still looked dead and missing the Mind Stone, which we saw? Or I don't have a theory for that. I think, I personally believe she brought him back. She doesn't have the science for it. And I don't know where she would have had anybody do that for her. But still, he looked dead in the last episode. So yeah. There's so many like theories and things that could have happened with this. So I'm gonna leave it at that right now. I want you guys to talk to me about what you think is actually going on. Now, if you have an actual spoiler, please do not list it in the comments below. Even if you state spoiler. Personally myself, I don't want any spoilers. I've heard leaks I've heard opinions, I've heard certain things that, could possibly be. I want to discover this on my own, and in all honesty, I'm not usually that person. Usually I'm the one that's like, I want to know what happens, give it to me, give it to me. So yeah, if you want to talk about any possible theories, outcomes, things like that, just don't discuss actual spoilers. I would appreciate that. So at that rate, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, draw some comments while the video is going. It's just cool. And share with your friends. We appreciate all the support that you guys give us, because we love making movies or videos to entertain you. It entertains us, and we greatly appreciate it. That being said, love and lights to you all.